Across centuries, the arts have stood as mirrors of human creativity. Cathedrals rising from stone, symphonies filling grand halls, plays echoing across candlelit stages. But behind every masterpiece lies the same enduring question: who makes it possible? From the wealth of kings and nobles to today's debates in parliaments and congresses, art has always depended on support. Patronage can spark genius or suppress it, preserve culture or politicize it. To understand the art we cherish, we must also understand the forces that sustained it. Welcome to the channel. Today's video is intended for advanced learners, as the comprehension of the content is quite demanding. With that said, if you would like to test yourself, follow the link in the description below to be taken to the exercises. There you can find the passage, multiple choice questions, and a section where you can write your own summary. Now, let's begin. Since the 18th century, artists and societies alike have wrestled with one central issue: who should support the arts and at what cost? We'll explore the story of patronage, from Samuel Johnson's rejection of noble sponsorship in 1755 to today's debates over government funding, and how this ongoing struggle shapes the culture we leave behind. Long before governments debated cultural budgets, art survived only because powerful patrons demanded it. In Renaissance Italy, entire cities became showcases of wealth and ambition, with cathedrals, statues, and paintings reflecting the desires of their patrons. Art was never just about beauty, it was a tool for prestige, propaganda, and personal glory. But while masterpieces flourished under this system, artists often struggled under its weight. By the 18th century, some had begun to question whether patronage truly supported creativity, or whether it trapped artists in servitude to the powerful. For centuries, artists relied on the generosity of kings, nobles, and powerful families. The Renaissance was built on this system, where painters, sculptors, and composers created at the pleasure of their patrons. This arrangement produced Michelangelo's ceiling in the Sistine Chapel, Shakespeare's plays for royal audiences, and countless other masterpieces. Yet it also meant the artist's freedom was limited, as creativity had to bend to the will of those paying the bills. By the mid-1700s, some thinkers began to push back. Samuel Johnson, who endured poverty while laboring over the first English dictionary, wrote a famous letter in 1755 rejecting the supercilious offer of Lord Chesterfield's patronage. He even defined a patron in his dictionary as a wretch who supports with insolence and is paid in flattery. Johnson's cutting words captured a growing unease with the dependence of artists on wealthy benefactors. Yet, even as critics denounced the system, history shows how profoundly patronage shaped the lives of individual artists. Some who began in obscurity found their voices only because a patron recognized their potential. In France, playwrights rose to fame by capturing the spirit of royal courts. In Germany and England, composers found stability through royal commissions that allowed their music to echo across Europe. Patronage was both a gateway and a gamble. It could elevate talent to immortality or condemn it to obscurity, depending on the favor of the powerful. French playwright Jean Racine was orphaned as a child, but gained an elite education that brought him into contact with the powerful court of Louis XIV. By what seemed an uncanny stroke of fortune, he was affiliated with royal circles, and his attainments in classical learning gave him near omniscient command of the stage. His plays, often written with the monarchy in mind, elevated him to the status of France's foremost tragic writer. Similarly, Georg Friedrich Handel, born in Germany, found his true success in England when Queen Anne extended her royal patronage. With this backing, Handel composed operas, symphonies, and oratorios that defined an age. Even towering figures like Mozart and Michelangelo might not have flourished without such financial support. Patronage, flawed though it was, gave the world an artistic legacy that would shape culture for centuries. The relationship was always delicate. Artists needed resources, while patrons decided prestige. But when both sides aligned, the system bequeathed a cultural inheritance of remarkable depth and influence. As monarchies declined and democracies rose, the question of who should fund the arts did not vanish. It transformed. Instead of gilded palaces and royal courts, art now turned to parliaments, councils, and public institutions. The shift represented more than just new sponsors. It raised a deeper question. Should culture be supported by the few who can afford it, or by the many who share in its benefits? In the modern world, governments became the new patrons, charged with deciding whether art is a public good worth protecting. By the 19th and 20th centuries, the patronage system gave way to institutions, public museums, and eventually government grants. Today, the question is no longer whether artists should be supported, but who should provide it. Advocates for public funding present a cogent case. Without subsidies, museums would be forced to placate wealthy donors, rather than preserve their integrity, limiting the cultural experiences available to ordinary people. They argue that art thrives on risk and experimentation, but such risks are impossible without financial backing. For them, government support ensures that arts remain accessible and innovative, enriching society as a whole. But government support has never been without controversy. For some, arts funding symbolizes cultural pride and national investment in creativity. For others, it is a drain on limited public resources and a potential tool of political manipulation. The modern debate mirrors the same tensions artists faced centuries ago: freedom versus control, support versus dependency. As with Johnson's day, the heart of the question remains: does patronage liberate the artist or bind them to the will of their sponsor? Supporters point to evidence that arts programs benefit communities. In one county, students in a free after-school choral society consistently achieved higher GPAs, only to see their grades fall when funding was cut. They argue that art is the daughter of freedom, and that a proud nation should invest in it. But opponents insist that tax dollars are better spent on urgent needs, such as school lunches and math and science education. They caution that subsidies can become a pretext for governments seeking to spread ideologies, misconstrue the value of culture, or even promote endemic problems of bureaucracy rather than genuine creativity. In their view, if the arts cannot survive in the free market, they may not be as essential as advocates claim. Some point to radio stations and theaters that continued to thrive after government funding was withdrawn, supported instead by private donations. The debate continues. Should art rely on public money, private wealth, or both? And in the end, how a society answers that question shapes the culture it leaves behind. Today we traced the story of artistic patronage, from Renaissance courts to modern government debates. We saw how art has always needed support, whether from nobles, monarchs, or public institutions, and how that support can both empower and constrain creativity. Through this account, we explored how history, vocabulary, and social context combine to shape meaning. Words like cogent, subsidy, and endemic expanded our understanding of cultural institutions, while the contrasting perspectives of Johnson, Racine, Pendle, and today's policymakers challenged us to think critically about freedom, responsibility, and the value of arts in society. In the end, the question remains open: who should support the arts? And how we answer it will define the cultural legacy we pass on to the future. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, or both to let me know if you would like to see more of this material. Now, if you're ready to test yourself, let's move on to some introductions to the multiple choice questions. These will not be answered to allow you to complete the exercise yourself, which, again, is linked in the description below. When working through them, you don't need to worry about whether your answer is right or wrong, as the program is coded to accept the correct answer only. This question asks you to think about why the author includes Samuel Johnson's sharp rejection of Lord Chesterfield. Don't just see it as a personal insult. Consider how it reframes the broader idea of patronage. You'll need to connect Johnson's stance to the tension between dependence and independence in artistic creation. This question focuses on structure. Look at how the passage moves from celebrating Renaissance patronage to introducing Johnson's critique. Don't just list what changes. Analyze how this shift reshapes the reader's perception. Here, you are asked to analyze diction. Think about how the positive word bequeathed contrasts with the negative supercilious. Consider how this pairing shapes the author's overall stance. This question asks you to consider the broader purpose of including Racine's biography. Think about how his career and connections illustrate the larger theme of patronage, rather than focusing only on the specific details of his plays. This two-part question requires you to synthesize the central claim of the passage and match it with the strongest supporting evidence. Avoid answers that oversimplify patronage as entirely positive or entirely negative. Instead, think about how the text balances cultural achievement with artistic constraint. This question asks you to think about the implied audience. Consider not only the subject matter, but also the way the passage presents its ideas. Does it lean towards specialists, policymakers, or a broader readership? The balance of content and tone will help you decide. This question requires you to interpret the author's attitude toward government support of the arts. It isn't purely positive or purely negative. Look for the nuance. This question asks you to imagine the passage without Johnson's episode. Think about what thematic work his letter does, introducing skepticism, highlighting arrogance, and giving voice to artistic independence. Ask yourself, what argument would the passage lose if his critique were not there? This question asks you to evaluate which revision best captures the tone of the original sentence. Don't just pick the fanciest wording. Focus on tone and meaning together. This question asks you to step back and look at the big picture. Why does the passage place Renaissance patronage next to modern government subsidies? Think about the larger continuity it suggests. Art has always needed support, and how this structure links the past with the present. If you have stayed to the end, thank you for your time and attention. See you next time.